Hi everybody. All right, so this is the first assignment. There's an assignment description where you're going to make a rectangle that's divided up into 64 smaller rectangles. It's composed of 64 smaller rectangles. And there's a lot to the project, and we're just going to start off with a simple process first. Before I get into anything, I want to talk about pencils, and then I'm going to also talk about the colored pencils, because we're going to use colored pencils for this project. But I want you to be familiar with your regular pencils, and in projects that precede this, that follow this, you will eventually use the graphite pencils as you see here. And the graphite pencils are numbered. If you ever look at a pencil before, you might see a letter H or a letter B or a number. For example, this one says 4H, and you might wonder what that means. You might already know. H means hard, B means soft, and that's refers to the graphite. So a softer graphite, which is the lead here, the softer graphite is going to be more darker, if you will. So this is a 2B, so you're gonna have a darker line. Whereas if I have a 4H, that same amount of pressure, I'm gonna have a lighter line. So if I were building a drawing, as we will be doing, slowly, layer by layer, you wanna start off with your hard pencils first and slowly move into your softer pencils. Now, this particular assignment is gonna be a little different. In the past, I've always used these for this assignment, these pencils. And for now, I'm going to jump into using the colored pencils. But in some cases, you might not have your colored pencils yet. So if you have to use these pencils, that's fine. What you're gonna do is you're gonna start off with a 4H. And I'll put this over here. The one thing that I always ask my students to do before anything is to practice hand control exercises. And that's something as simple as just making marks just like this on a diagonal. What I'm doing is I'm locking my wrist. I'm holding my pencil securely, and I'm drawing more with my elbow. I mean, not my elbow, more of my shoulder up here. And my elbow has a little movement, but it's somewhat stiff. And I'm doing this deliberately, and I'm also sliding my hand up and down the paper. And that's what gives me the control to create that straight line. And all I do is almost like a record needle player, is that I put the needle down on the record, and then my hand is moving, and it makes the line. That's as simple as it is. And then you want to practice this in the other direction. And you want to have control. What you don't want is a line that looks like that. That I call as a scared, not very confident line. This here is a confident line. And if you can see that when I'm drawing like this, I go back and forth a few times on that same line. I take a few swings. If this was swinging a golf club, I take a few practice swings. It's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just getting where I want the pencil to go, and I'm slowly applying the pencil down onto that surface. So that's hand control exercises. You want to be able to draw vertical lines, same exact way. You want to be able to draw horizontal lines, the same exact way. Diagonal lines, in both directions. If you can do that, that's drawing basically. Okay, what we're gonna do next after you've practiced that, and what I'm using right here, this is just printing paper. It's cheap, it's thin, it's easy, just before you use the real paper, which I'll talk about in a moment. This is Bristol board, vellum, or smooth surface, works just fine, but this is just nice to practice. What we're gonna do on this paper eventually, and it's good to practice here, is you're going to draw a rectangle. And you can see that I'm using these hand control exercises that I just used. And what I just did here is I just made a plane here and here, and I'm going to finish that plane here. And just so you know, these lines that I'm making are parallel lines. This line's parallel to this one, which is parallel to this one. This is not in perspective. You may have learned linear perspective previously. We're not going to draw with linear perspective. We're going to draw with parallel line. It's called parallel line drawing. So all lines are parallel. So right now, I'm just eyeing visual assessment of these lines to make sure they're parallel. So this is kind of a quick rough-in. When you do your major or your rectangle here, you want it somewhat centered. This seems to be a little high towards the corner. So if I were to adjust this, I would probably pull this guy down and then adjust these lines so I could slide this down. The distance between here and here, you want to center it as much as you can. So when you start off, it's going to take a little bit of time and practice to get this rectangle set. After that, what you're going to do is you're going to cross your corners. We're going to do this with a ruler. When you cross your corners on a plane, and I'm just using the side plane that's facing me right now, when you cross your corners on a plane that finds the center, it finds the center of this entire plane. So I can draw a line vertical, which bisects these two sides, or bisects this into two sides. And I can also draw a line in this direction, which is a diagonal, that splits this in that direction as well. What I'm going to do now is from here to here and here to here, since I divided this into two sides, I'm going to break this down again by crossing my corners, and it finds my center right there. I'm going to draw a vertical line. Do it again on this side. Divides it in half. Find my vertical line. Just like sliced bread, I just slice this right down the side. Now, instead of doing all that process as I did on this plane and apply it to this plane, I already have some information that I don't have to worry about that I can use to run it over to the other side. So this line goes up, it intersects this top line here, and I run it over to the other side. Same thing here, same thing here. Now, if you're having trouble getting these, because it is an awkward direction to go in that direction. And if you're left-handed, I'm sure it's awkward to go this way. So what you can do is you can just rotate your paper and turn it so you can make that same angle that's a little bit more natural and easier. So you just rotate the paper. That's the best way to go about it. Now, since I divided this way, that's great. Now what I need to do is I got to find the lines that are going to divide it this way into quarters. So if you notice, I'm starting to divide this into quarters. And if I break this down, every side into quarters, this is basically divided into 64 rectangles. So how do I find the center of the top plane? Cross your corners. So I'm going to cross my corners right here. And again, I'm not using a ruler in this case. Eventually you will. So this is somewhat all freehand, and you want to draw it as if as if you are a ruler, but without a ruler, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, so I'm going to take this line and run it across in that direction. And notice it took me a little while. I had to draw about 6 or 7 lines to kind of finally angle that the way I wanted it to, parallel between these two lines. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, I don't even have to continue this plane. I'm going to come back to that. It's easier for me to work in this plane because it's a little smaller. This plane's bigger. There's more opportunity for error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this line straight down so I know where that corner is. And I'm going to cross my corners here, which, to be honest, I didn't even have to do that because I have my center line right here. And all I got to do is draw a line straight down. And you can see that it went right through the center anyway. And since I had this center here, all I have to do is carry that over in the other direction. So I didn't really have to cross those corners. But what I can do now is I'm going to cross these corners here from here to here, and that's gonna find the center going vertical up. And I can run it across the other side. Same thing here, I can cross my corners. Find the center, vertical up. And it goes across the other side. So you can kind of see that this is starting to look like it's divided. It is divided into almost, not yet there, 64 pieces. I still have to draw lines going here and here. So how do I do that? So what I can do is I can just see that how this is divided, this little square here, any square or rectangle, you can just cross the corners and find your center, and here's the center here. So then I can just take this center, run it across parallel. Took me a while to get that. And I'll do the same thing here. Here's the center. Okay, now I'm gonna flip it this way. I'm gonna run this, actually I'm gonna flip it this way. I'll run these across this direction because I just follow this line, it hits that line there, and I run it across the other direction. Follow this line, it intersects this line here, and it changes direction as the plane shifts. And there we go. So if you count this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times 4 is 16. So this whole top plane here is 16, and there's 4 layers to it. So 16 times 4 is 64. So you're gonna do this on the larger version here. But before we do that, we're also going to start to use the colored pencil. Now, colored pencils. What I have here is, I have 4 colors. And you could use up to 3 or 4 if you so choose. Don't try to use them all. The reason why we're using these 4 colors is because some are lighter in value and some slowly become darker. So this is the lightest value that we have. There's actually yellow, but you can't see it because it's so light. So I don't recommend using yellow. So I'm gonna use this as my first coat. And that's similar to the 4H pencil as what we were talking about here. So the 4H pencil, which is one of your harder graphites you have here, is going to represent the lightest value here because it's a harder graphite, so it's a lighter value. This is a lighter color, so we're kind of making that connection between the two. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sharpen this guy. Oops. Just gotta figure out where the darn, there we go. And if you read, some of you will have this sharpener and it says color grip right here. Some are specifically, or some of the sharpeners have different sharpeners for the colored pencil. And in some cases they work well, in some cases they don't. It depends. This one's starting to sharpen. But because the graphites, or I'm sorry, this isn't graphite, because the material that's used to draw with is different than graphite, it doesn't sharpen as easy. All right. Now, what we do next here is same thing. We'll just basically copy the same idea here. And I'm gonna put it on this side because it's distracting me. So always start off with that first vertical line, which is the corner. And you don't want the corner to be central. You want it to be over to the left or over to the right. In this case, I'm putting it over to the left of center. And then about down here is where I want the corner, as far down as I want the corner to be. And I might make an adjustment later. And then here, here. And again, I'm just making my 2 planes. And if you think of this as the letter Y, so this is the bottom of the Y, this is the right of the letter Y, this is the left of the letter Y. These are the 3 axes that exist within this form. And that's it. Everything else is parallel to it. So then this line is parallel to it. this line is parallel to it. And once again, I got really close to the top. It's almost identical to this one. Not what I wanted to do, but that's, again, this is free form, or not using a ruler, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And let me just clean this up here. So the next thing is you could jump to another color, and in this case, I'm going to use purple. And I want to sharpen this guy too. It's always good to keep your pencil sharp. Just stay on that. That's good. And the reason I'm using this is I'm going to use this as just another color so I don't get confused, because as you can tell, the more lines you have on here, the more confusing it is, especially when you start putting these diagonal lines in. So in this case, I think I'm just going to use this as my diagonal lines. Or should I go back? And I'm kind of thinking through this in real time. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with this guy, this color, for the moment. Find your center, goes up. And this is why we practice. We don't know how it's going to work out. So instead of starting the main drawing, you got to work it out first. So what I did, I just crossed my corners, found my center, put my vertical line in. I'm going to do it again here. I put these little dots here just so I can see, and it helps me, gives me like a something to aim at when I'm trying to draw my cross lines. Gives me a target. Notice I'm starting to rotate the paper quite a bit. Along these points, I'm just going to draw a line straight through, draw a line straight through, cross my corners here, find the center, draw a line straight up, take a line straight across, cross corner here, this is the center, draw a line straight down, straight across, cross my corners on this little guy, draw a line straight down, draw a line straight across. Same thing here, I'm just gonna draw, actually, since I have these little centers here, I can just draw a line in this direction too, intersects this line, then I can just take it over to this side. Find my center here, take it over, oops. Take it over. Now it's not perfect, but you get the idea. So that's basically what I did here. And I did this all within the same color, and now I can start to use a different color, and maybe I can think about the next stage. And in this case, the objective of the assignment is that you're going to start to eliminate almost half, not a specific number, but if you have 64 cubes, think of, you might eliminate 25, 30, and you have a nice equal distribution of cubes throughout. So if I take out this first layer here, for example, I'm going to have cubes on the interior space that I might want to keep or I might want to take out. There's rules to this. You cannot have any cubes touching face to face. If they're touching face to face for this assignment, it's not going to, it's just one of the issues or the problems that you're going to have to solve. It can touch corner to corner. So for example, a corner right here, these two cubes can touch corner to corner, but they can't touch face to face. So that's just going to be an added problem that you're going to have to figure out. So at this point, you can use a different color and say, you know what, I'm going to keep this guy in, but I'm going to take this guy out. And since we have an eraser, and then I can just draw a line straight down and across. And as you see, and then across here. So just by doing that pretty quickly, I eliminated a single cube and I had to draw in the other cube. And I'm just gonna outline that guy there so I can see it more clearly. And it's just gonna help you, now that we're using colored pencils, it's gonna help you count. So for example, say you wanna take this guy out back here. All I have to do is just drop a line down. That's done, he's out. So I'm gonna take out these two because I feel like it. Now that rule about things not touching face to face, you don't have to worry about it right away. Because at the beginning, you just want to start to subtract. Down, cross. And you might be wondering, like, how do you know where to put these lines? Everything is the same direction. It's either this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, or vertical. So once I see this line here, I just drop the line down. And this corner here is that corner, and this corner here is that corner. And oops, I forgot to put this guy in. So now I'm starting to take rectangles out and put rectangles in, and it is helping me because I'm using a colored pencil that's slightly darker. Whether it's purple, I don't care about the color. It's just a step darker so I could see it. There's a functionality or a rhyme and a reason I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, there's gonna be moments where I'm gonna say, or suggest, take a whole row of these things out. Take a whole row and then some. Take big chunks out, take big risks. Don't just take a little bit piece here, a little piece there. And then I'm gonna put this back in. So this is the bottom here. I think I took this one out because I felt like it. I'm gonna put this in here. This is the corner. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. If you look at this corner here, if I drew a line straight across, this is where the back of that cube's gonna be. And then it's right here. And then it's right here. So once you start taking these out, you're gonna have to kind of count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's back behind there and you're gonna count to figure out where things are. And then you're gonna use these little intersection points here to follow through to see where lines exist, etc. So since I took this out, but I kept this in, I believe this stays in. And you just have to make sure that your lines are still parallel. And the top of this line would be right here, so that's gonna be about right there. And then there's gonna be another one, 1, 2, 3 here, and I think that would be about right there. So you can kind of see that I'm starting to visually enter into this form because I'm digging some of the stuff out. And I'm just playing around with design and seeing where it goes. So what should I subtract next? What if I just subtracted a whole row here? And maybe, since these can't touch face to face, I might have to take one out here. Or do I take the one out here? And what I don't want you to do is to take every other one out. That's just a symmetrical design. I don't want you to do that. It has to be an asymmetrical design when you're finished, meaning that it's not symmetrical all around the form. So I took this out, put this back in, put this over here, this goes in, and here's the dividing lines. Okay, I think I took this one out. And what if I took the one out below? So now these are floating, and it's tricky. Once you take the one out below, this one's gonna look like it's on the ground, but it's not. And sometimes you might wanna give yourself a little note and saying that's row 2, because it's in this row here. Otherwise it will visually confuse you. Or you wanna keep that bottom one in and then take the top one out. What if we did that instead? And that way you might be able to see inside of here a little bit more. All right, and I think that's a better decision. Now I can see the base of this guy, and if this line comes down, it's right here. So here's the side of these. This still goes back in space. And I'd have to play around within here a little bit more, but I just don't want to confuse anybody at the moment. I think there's gonna be a line here. There's a line here, you can't even see it. This goes back behind there, so it's gonna do something like this. I think this was here, and I think this is kind of where these guys ended up. And oh, that's the side. Yeah, I'm a little confused about this one, 1, 2. I think it's supposed to, these two are supposed to be share the same line. But again, we're not using a ruler, so some of this is gonna not work out perfectly. And you work this and work this until you get it to where you want it. Once you get it to where you want it, then you can start to use a darker, and this is where the blue would come in, and you could say, I want this guy here. This is definitely gonna stay, and I'm gonna use the blue to outline the form. Okay, and it's darker, it pops out more, and you can kind of see that, and it slowly evolves. And if you wanted to slowly apply the blue, you could use a light blue first if you're not unsure, and then on top of that you can be like, okay, I'll put this blue on. All right, and then the next video we will start the main drawing on this paper here using the colored pencils. For right now, you're supposed to do some of these, play around with the idea of the assignment using colored pencil and just erasing and experimenting with the idea. Okay, see ya.